History is full of names that seem to shine brighter than others. Newton, Einstein, Darwin, Tesla, Mandela. We tell ourselves that they changed the world, that without them, history would have taken a completely different path. That exceptional, almost superhuman individual exist, people capable on their own of bending the course of events. It's a story we love to tell ourselves. We like it because it's simple, because it's linear, because it gives us heroes to admire, models to imitate, myths to believe in. The idea of the lone genius, the man or woman who, isolated from the rest of the world, produces an idea powerful enough to revolutionize everything. But this story is false. Or at least it's an extreme simplification of reality. And today, I want to take you behind the scenes of this illusion. I want to show you why almost nothing in human history is truly the work of a single individual, and why understanding this doesn't take meaning away from our lives, but paradoxically gives it back in a much deeper way. Stay until the end because the final part completely alters the way we think about success, meaning, and personal fulfillment. Human beings have always needed stories, and stories work better when they have clear protagonists, recognizable faces, names we can remember. It's much easier to say Newton discovered gravity than to explain centuries of astronomical observation, mathematical progress, increasingly precise instruments, and a scientific community slowly building a coherent picture of reality. And yet, that is exactly what happens. Newton himself knew this very well when he wrote, "If I am seen farther, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." A sentence we quote often today, but rarely take seriously to its full extent. Newton did not invent gravity out of nothing. He organized, he connected, he mathematically formalized something that had been emerging for a long time. Without Kepler, without Galileo, without decades of observations and better tools, his theory would never have existed. And the same is true for Einstein. When we think about relativity, we imagine a solitary man lost in thought. But Einstein worked within an incredibly rich culture and scientific context. Lorentz, Poincaré, Minkowski, Mach. Ideas already in the air, problems already open. He took the final step, the decisive one, but not the first and not the only one. History, however, remembers the name, not the process. There's an idea that often makes us uncomfortable, yet is supported by overwhelming historical evidence. If the figures we consider key had never existed, someone else would have taken their place. Maybe at a slightly different time, maybe with different tools, maybe with an alternative formulation. But the final result would not have been radically different. In the history of science, there are countless examples of simultaneous discoveries, the same idea emerging in different places at roughly the same time. Calculus with Newton and Leibniz, evolution with Darwin and Wallace, oxygen discovered almost simultaneously by Priestley and Lavoisier. This happens because ideas do not emerge in a vacuum. They emerge when conditions are right, when enough knowledge, errors, attempts, tools, and unanswered questions accumulate. Discovery becomes almost inevitable. The person who signs it is often just a final link in a very long chain. To think otherwise is to attribute almost magical powers to the individual and to ignore the fundamental role of context, culture, and collective effort. Steven Sloman and Philip Fernbach, in their book The Knowledge Illusion, explain this mechanism very clearly. They write, we substitute individual stories for the truth. By telling ourselves these stories, we convince ourselves that we understand the world. But in reality, we often understand only its surface. We prefer a simple narrative to a complex explanation. We prefer a hero to a system. We prefer a clear cause to an intricate network of relationships. This doesn't happen only in history or science. It happens everywhere, in economic success, in politics, in technology. We think a company succeeds because of a single visionary CEO. We ignore thousands of engineers, designers, workers, researchers, infrastructures, collective decisions, and previous failures. It's a form of cognitive laziness. The world is complicated, and accepting that requires an effort we are often unwilling to make. This illusion has a profound side effect. It makes us believe that to give meaning to our lives, we must be extraordinary, that we must do something big, visible, memorable, that a normal life is not enough. So we start measuring ourselves against unrealistic standards. We want to leave an indelible mark on history. We want to be remembered. But there's an uncomfortable truth we rarely face, honestly. Whatever you do, sooner or later, we will be forgotten. And no matter how great our contribution is, years, centuries, millennia, time erases everything. And as if that weren't enough, once we die, we are no longer aware of anything. There is no us left to enjoy that memory. Steven Pinker puts it bluntly but honestly, not only does the universe not care about our desires, but in the natural course of events, it will appear to thwart them, because there are so many more ways for things to go wrong than for them to go right. At this point, the question becomes inevitable. If no one changes the world alone, if we will be forgotten anyway, if the universe is indifferent to our desires, what's the point of doing anything? This is where many people stop. This is where nihilism is born, cynicism, the idea that nothing really matters. If everything is destined to dissolve, if our name will be erased, then why try? Why suffer, fail, struggle? But this conclusion comes from a mistake in perspective. We confuse meaning with memory. We confuse the value of an action with its duration over time, as if something only mattered if it were eternal, visible, recognized. In reality, most of the things that make life worth living are not eternal. A conversation that changes how someone sees the world, a gesture of kindness at the right moment, a lesson passed on to someone who will carry it forward without even remembering us. Meaning does not come from something lasting forever, but from the fact that it happens. And above all, from the fact that it contributes, even in the smallest way, to something larger than ourselves. When we stop asking, will I be remembered, and start asking, am I contributing, everything changes. We don't need to save the world. We need to participate in the world. And this is where the weight of existence becomes lighter. Not because nothing matters, but because not everything depends on us. Humanity moves like a massive system. Every individual pushes, sometimes imperceptibly, in a certain direction. The result of all these tiny pushes is the reality we live in today, and the reality of tomorrow. No one truly controls the overall direction, and yet, when we look at history, over the long term, something surprising emerges. Despite setbacks, mistakes, and tragedies, humanity as a whole improves. We live longer, we cure diseases that were once fatal, fewer people die of hunger. Discrimination, though still present, has been steadily declining when viewed on an historical scale. This is not the result of a single plan, not of a higher guiding authority. It's the result of millions of small contributions. Stephen Covey once wrote, "Sometimes when I consider what tremendous consequences come from little things, I'm tempted to think there are no little things." We often underestimate our actions because we observe them from too close. A gesture, a word, a shared idea, an example set for someone else. We may never see the effects of what we do. They may only become visible generations later. But that doesn't make them any less real. In fact, this is exactly how deep change works. Slowly, invisibly, cumulatively. Of course, not all pushes go in the direction we consider right. History is full of destructive contributions, of ideologies born with good intentions and ending in tragedy, of decisions made out of fear, selfishness, or ignorance. And this scares us, because it implies responsibility. It implies the risk of being wrong, of contributing even unintentionally to something we didn't want to support. But there's another truth we often ignore. Not acting is still a choice. Inaction is also a push. Silence is also a direction. Not taking a position helps maintaining the status quo. Making mistakes, on the other hand, is an inevitable part of the process. Direction is not discovered by standing still and thinking forever. It's discovered by walking, by correcting course, adjusting, trying, failing, and trying again. You don't need a clear vision from the start. You don't need to know exactly what your role is in the grand scheme of things. Very often, our most important contribution is indirect. A push given to another person, an idea that sparks something, an example that is observed, absorbed, and transformed. And we may never see the results of what we have done, but that doesn't mean they don't exist. Perhaps the real goal is not to be remembered. Perhaps it's not to leave our name in history books. Perhaps it's simply to give a push, even a small one, even an invisible one. To know that, thanks in part to us, humanity has taken a slightly different, perhaps slightly better direction. This awareness is what gives meaning, fulfillment, and satisfaction. Not because we will be remembered, but because we were part of that movement. And now I leave you with one final question. If no one changes the world alone, in which direction are you pushing?